I thought we did the teaser first. We did the teaser first. Yeah. Correct. Hey, welcome back to this month's episode of Common Sense, sponsored by Ohio Valley Bank. We're here in the studios at Grande Community College and Grande University, and today we're going to talk about some different current issues relating to the banking industry and the stock market and different things like that. Today we're going to be joined by Missy Wooten.
Yep. And
Missy is the Assistant Vice President and Shareholder Relations Manager and also Trust Officer with Ohio Valley Bank. And she's going to be talking to us a little bit about their upcoming shareholders meeting that's coming up pretty soon, and also different things related to the stocks and the shareholder meeting is all about, and kind of a little bit about how stocks work in a publicly traded company.
Yep.
So
should be a lot of good information. I know I've got a lot of questions.
Yeah, I do too.
You always hear about stocks and mutual funds and just different types of investment things that you can get into, and I know this will definitely be educational for me.
Right.
So.
Well, it's one of those things that we always see on the news. It's, sometimes here recently the stock market's been up and down versus, when different political issues come up, it kind of has a lot of influence. Trade issues, different things like that get announced, and it kind of has a play on it. Yep. And so today we're going to bring in Missy here, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Welcome, Missy. We're glad to have you on the show today.
Nice to be here.
So if you could, why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and what your role is there with Ohio Valley Bank and how long you've been there, and all those good little details.
I've been with Ohio Valley Bank 33 years this June coming up, and at the bank I'm a trust officer and I work with clients with that. I take care of shareholder relations, which means I take care of shareholders of Ohio Valley Bank stock. And we've got quite a few shareholders in our area. We've got shareholders within 48 of the 50 states in the United States, so that's really a good thing. So we work with shareholders all over.
Right. Okay. Well, that's really neat, because, we're getting that exposure out there. I know our TV show here is growing. We're getting some more exposure as well out into Ohio, more than just regional here in Southern Ohio. And we do want to take a quick moment to give a shout out to a couple of our broadcast partners that we have out there that are airing some of our episodes on their stations now. We have Joe Perkins with Perkins Community Television TV in Youngstown, Ohio. And we've also added Shane Reinhardt with Anderson Community TV in Cincinnati. So we'd also really like to thank them for airing our broadcasts and recognize their support. So thank you very much.
So I guess before we get started talking about the bank and its holding company, maybe you could give us a little insight on how the company's structured.
Well, Ohio Valley Bank is the company that has, Ohio Valley Bank is the company, and Ohio Valley Banc Corp is the holding company, which Ohio Valley Banc Corp is the one that we have the stock.
Okay.
So it used to be Ohio Valley Bank stock, and it was not publicly traded. It was closely held. To buy shares, you had to know someone and everything like that. And then in 1992, it became publicly traded. And when it became publicly traded, it's now Ohio Valley Banc Corp's stock. So 1992, when it became Ohio Valley Banc Corp stock, we started being traded on the NASDAQ market, and our ticker symbol is OVBC. And if anybody is interested in looking it up, you can look up on the NASDAQ. You can also go to our specific website, and our website is Ohio Valley Bank is www.ovbc.com, and then look up our price of our stock.
Okay. So, and that's the parent company for Ohio Valley Bank?
That is correct.
And Loan Central, is that?
Loan Central is in there also, yes.
Yep.
Okay, so if you do purchase stock to Ohio Valley Banc Corp, you're really buying stock in the holding company, but under that, Ohio Valley Bank and Loan Central.
Right, that is correct. That is correct.
Okay. So I guess one thing that would be good to know is if I, or can I, if I wanted to buy stock and I'm interested in that, what's the process?
You can
How
go
do
a
you go
couple
about it?
different ways about buying shares of stock. You can, first of all, you can go to a broker. You can purchase shares of stock at the broker. And current price as of right now, it's right around $45 a share. If you want to do that, you can go to the broker, but they're going to charge you a commission. So, and one way we have customers go around this is they know a customer that already is a shareholder, and if you know someone that's already a shareholder, all you would have to do is let them sell one share to you or transfer one share over to you, and then you can become a shareholder that way.
Okay.
And we also talked a little bit at lunch about transferring the stock as presents, as gifts.
Yes,
perhaps.
yes. What we have is a lot of people do dividend reinvest, and they buy shares of stock. And what you can do, you can buy these shares of stock, and we have customers that are older customers, and what they like to do, instead of buying gifts for their kids or grandkids, nieces, nephews, whatever, what they like to do, they give one share of stock or 5 shares of stock, whatever the case might be. They give that as gifts. And we fix up this little gift card, and that's what's presented to these people. And they get this gift. It could be for graduation, it could be birthday, or whatever the case might be. And a lot of these people do this year in and year out. So these children can become shareholders, and these shares starts adding up, and they start accumulating. If they participate in the dividend reinvestment plan, they start adding up. So I was going to tell you, I had this one story. We had Grandpa. He came in, and he gave 1 share of stock to his granddaughter. Well, his granddaughter, she was, early teenager. Well, she was in 4-H. So 4-H is very popular in southeastern Ohio.
Yes.
So she got this share of stock, and she had an animal that year that she took to the fair. Well, she received her check when her animal sold. Well, her grandpa brought her in to see me, and when he brought her in to see me, she brought that check in from her selling her livestock at the fair, and he stood in my doorway, and she come in and she said, "I want to buy more shares of stock." And she just thought she was so good. That just meant so much to her, because she was able to come in by herself and use her own money that she worked so hard for to come in and buy shares of stock with.
Right.
But stuff like that is just really, really, that's interesting. We really appreciate those kind of stories like that. So.
Sure.
Well, and in full disclosure, I'm doing a little bit of stock with Ohio Valley Bank. So I know you have to kind of tell things like
Which
that.
I'm trying to
now,
talk him
that
into
being in the
transferring
news.
some to me.
But anyway, it was a blessing. It was there was a program that the bank did at the time. Was looking to do a house loan to build a house, and an incentive was you got a little better interest rate reduction if you were a stockholder within the bank.
Yes.
So that was a current program at the time. Don't know if that's still available or not, but it was a blessing because that amount that I invested probably 18 years ago is now about 4 times worth what my initial investment was. So the stock has done very well over the years.
Yes, the stock has done very well.
And, a lot of times, you talk about buying the stock as a gift for a graduation. A lot of times people used to give savings bonds. And there was a little bit of return on those. And there's probably still a little bit of return.
Well, currently,
So these could be nice returns on
currently
these stock
we
shares.
pay 21 cents a share dividend on our stock. So a lot of people will have their dividends to go back into dividend reinvest to buy more shares of stock. And then you can also put in voluntary cash plus the dividends. So a lot of people's shares accounts can grow, and you don't have any commissions involved when you do it this way.
Right.
So it is a very nice program that we offer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
And also, there's 2 ways that as a shareholder you can get paid back. One is you could receive quarterly dividend checks,
You can get a check, yes.
or you could have the dividend reinvestment program. Is that?
Yes. And what happens if you are in the dividend reinvestment program, you have shares that goes back in, and we buy fractions. And the fraction starts adding up and become more whole shares. So before you know it, you're getting more shares, and you didn't even realize how much work was involved, and you've got more shares of stock.
Right.
So.
Okay. And the stock certificate might not be as eye-opening to a kid as a new iPhone or something, but
Right.
in the long run, it would definitely
Yes, that
Well,
is.
it's
be
definitely
a much
something
better
of value.
investment. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. So, one thing I've noticed, I do watch, or you hear it on the radio, the stock report. I know they'll give local or various stocks of local companies, and OVBC. I noticed it was maybe $25 a couple years ago, or maybe even a year ago, and now it's really shot up.
It has done very well. A lot of companies, do very well, based upon how the company itself is doing. So our shareholders are very pleased with what our stock has been doing lately. So.
Yeah.
Well, and obviously that's a reflection of the company.
It is.
Of how well the stock is done. And I know a lot of our viewers that have watched the show over the past 2 or 3 years that we've been doing this with Ohio Valley Bank. I've got to meet a lot of the key partners and key people within the company. So I think that's also a tribute to the fine folks that we've had on this show that are all part of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The
It's a good
growth
point.
of that corporation. So
Sure is.
it's been great.
Yep. So what is the price today?
Well, as of yesterday, it was right around $45 a share. It goes up and down a little bit. Sometimes you see in the newspaper, it's the last trade. So the last trade could be a buy or the last trade could be a sell. So sometimes it looks like the price goes up and down, which it really hasn't. It's just what the price was as the last transaction for that day. But $45, $45.50, that's kind of the ballpark where our stock price is right now.
That's good. That's great. So when you say it could be a buy, it could be a sell, what do you mean by that at the end of the day?
The stock market closes at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So for every time when the stock price cuts off at 4 o'clock, the last trade went through with somebody buying shares of stock, or the last trade was somebody selling shares of stock.
Okay.
So the way it always is, you always have to pay more to buy it than you get out of it to sell it. So that's why sometimes the last trade is up a little bit or down a little bit, depends on which one went through last.
Okay.
Okay.
Makes sense. Yep. Now, another thing that we, something that I've always heard, and I think this would be great for our viewers to maybe understand this in a little more detail too, is you hear people talk about stocks, and then you hear, commercials on TV talk about mutual funds. So can you tell just a little bit of difference in what actual stocks are versus mutual funds? And
Yes, I can do that. Ohio Valley Bank is a common stock. So Ohio Valley Bank is a common stock. You can buy stock, for example, in different companies. There's local companies you can buy into. Could be a Walmart or McDonald's or something like that. Starbucks, whatever the case might be, would be local companies that you could buy stock in. Well, what a mutual fund is, we'll use an example like an apple tree, okay? So this apple tree is made up of a tree with all kinds of apples all over the whole tree. That would be a mutual fund. So what that would be one mutual fund, and it's got 400 or 500 different companies in it, and all those apples put together makes up that one mutual fund. So you can have one investment, which is a stock, in your portfolio, and it can go up and it can go down, and it can make your retirement or your investment go up and down.
Right.
Where if you own in mutual funds as your investments, they can just be one apple might go bad, might have a bad day, might have a bad quarter, and if that's the case, your retirement and portfolio is not going to be affected as much. So when you see the stock market going up and down, the stock market goes up and down, it affects large companies, but not all companies are always effective when the stock market goes up and down.
Right. There's always winners and losers
There
in those,
is, yes.
those different
Yes,
scenarios.
that is good.
Yep.
If something happens that makes one company go down, there's probably somebody else taking
Benefiting,
the profit
yes,
somewhere.
they're
That's right.
benefiting, that's right.
Yeah.
So it's a little less risky. Obviously, we talked about the growth of the stock of Ohio Valley Bank.
Yes.
But if something should happen and that goes down, well, if all of your apples are in that basket, you're
That diversification, a lot of people talk about
Diversification is
don't put
important.
all your eggs in one basket
That's
is
right.
what we've heard for years.
right.
Yep.
Well, and that's just like we talk with businesses, on a
Right.
daily basis. We talk about, who are your customers?
Yep.
And, if we get a business that comes to us and they say, well, we do all of our work with company A.
One person. Yeah.
Well, what happens if something happens to company A?
Right.
Then you're in trouble. So you really need to diversify.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a smart business move.
Yes.
It's stable. It's a safe play.
Absolutely. So I know one thing, and we talked about this at lunch, is I think you have a meeting coming up soon, annual shareholders meeting.
Yes, we have an annual shareholders meeting, which normally happens in the month of May, and it's in town in Gallipolis, Ohio, at the Ariel Theater. We have proxies that we send out to our shareholders, which a proxy is a paper we send out to our shareholders, and what our shareholders do, they get to vote on the renewal or different proposals that's up for re-election for that year. So we send out proxies, and when we have our annual meeting, our shareholders votes their opinion. They vote their proxies represented by how many shares each one of these accounts have.
Okay.
Okay.
So when we have our annual meeting, last year we had 220 people at our shareholder meeting, which is a really good turnout. Mm-hmm. We really like to have our customers involved with what happens with Ohio Valley Bank. Mm-hmm. There's some companies that has small shareholder meetings. They might have 20 people at their meetings, but we really pride ourselves into having customer shareholder involvement. So we really lean towards having them come, having them voice their opinions. You know, we like to know what's going on with the community.
Right.
So last year we had about 220 people at our shareholder meeting, and there's a couple things. They vote on the proposal for directors and some things like that. They go over statement of income, you know, just the normal meeting stuff. Normally a shareholder meeting might last maybe 45 minutes to an hour. It doesn't take very long, but it's a really nice thing that we have. If anybody has an opportunity and is a shareholder, we really would like to have them come and see one of these for a change.
Right.
Okay.
It's more like a big reception and a gathering.
It is. And you get to see the people that work for the company. You get to see the people that takes care of your stuff, takes care of your home loans, or takes care of your stock, whatever the case might be. So.
Right. Okay. So you say how many stockholders are in the bank approximately?
We probably have, I'd say maybe close to 2,400, 2,400 stockholders. Mm-hmm. And out of those 2,400 stockholders, give or take, we might have maybe close to 1,800 that participate in our dividend reinvestment plan that we were speaking of earlier, which that's really good. The remaining people, like you said, we will get a dividend check every quarter when we pay our dividends. So, but we really have good participation in our dividend reinvestment plan.
Good.
Okay. So you mentioned that, you know, during that stakeholder meeting that people come and there are issues brought before the group to vote on.
Yes.
Some people have already voted in proxy.
Yes.
But can you give an example of, you know, what some of those business items might be at the meetings that people vote on?
One of them might be what would be the accounting firm we use for Ohio Valley Bank. We have that up for re-election on an annual basis. We have board of directors who oversees what goes on at Ohio Valley Bank, and what we have each year at our annual meeting, we have them revolving. Every year we have 3 or 4 that's up for re-election.
Okay.
So their term is expiring, and what happens is when their terms are expiring, we check with our shareholders to get enough of votes in to have those people put in for re-election for another term.
Okay.
So. But they kind of revolve around, so every year it's 3 or 4 different ones coming up. So.
Okay. So the purpose of that is so that it is a publicly traded company, that the group of people who are shareholders, you know, really have final say. It's a democracy.
They get to voice their opinion.
Right.
Yes, that is correct.
So you don't really have one person making all the decisions for the corporation.
No.
Okay.
Okay. And you'd mentioned that you have a really high turnout on your on the proxy.
Our proxies, we really try our best to get around 80%. Last year we had 82% return of our proxy. That was amazing. So we really like to have involvement of our proxies from our shareholders. So if you get a chance to vote your proxies, some people say it's a formality, I don't have to do this. But it's very important to us to have our shareholders vote. I just like to get that stressed out there.
Okay.
You know, we really, really appreciate that.
Now, so those have already been mailed out?
They have been mailed out, so they're coming in the mail daily.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So do you have to own a certain amount of stock to be able to attend the shareholders meeting, or
No.
is it open to any
Any
shareholder?
shareholder, you can have anywhere from 1 share to 1,000 shares to 5,000 shares. You're going to get a proxy.
Okay.
We treat all of our shareholders the same, small, medium, large, they all get treated the same. So.
Okay. And the like if you own 5,000 shares, would that vote count more than someone that owned
We
one?
we count each vote. So yes, 5,000 shares would count more. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So if you're in 5,000 shares versus 1 share, your vote would count 5,000
That
times.
is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's based on the shares.
Based on the number of shares.
Okay.
All right. So I know you've done some covers for the report, I think, that have been pretty neat in the past. And what's this year's annual cover look like?
This year, we have had 2 of these. We have recently started doing this community. Our thing is community first.
Okay.
So one thing we have done recently is a community bowl, and the community bowl comes out to be local high school River Valley versus local high school Gay Academy. They compete each other in this football game. And this football game, the winner of this football game receives this very nice trophy, and they get to have it on display. We have had 2 of these. River Valley won the first match, and Gay Academy won it this past year. So
Okay.
we're 1-1 right
There you
now.
go. Nice.
So
Well,
that
friendly
is-
competition.
That is neat. That's very neat.
I am a Gay Academy alumni, so I'm kind of partial.
Okay.
So.
Well, good. Well, yeah, and that's just a prime example of the work that the bank does in the community.
And supports the
And
community.
you do have a great program. And I know we've got a note here to talk a little bit about your Impact Days program. And that's where you give maybe some employees release time to go out and work
Yes,
on projects. It's like
yes.
a paid day of work.
So
Out doing some service?
you can split it up. You can take it by hours. You can do half a day. You can do a full day. I have done impact time at different places around our area. We have this local thing called the Outreach Center. The Outreach Center really, really appreciated going out there. You know, they help people that's in need. I have helped out at the Community Bowl that we just spoke at. I work out there. We do Habitat for Humanity.
Did you wear your Galley Academy stuff when you worked that, or did you
No,
have to?
I wear my Ohio Valley Bank, so we wear our Ohio Valley Bank stuff, and we did that. I mean, there's different things you can help out at local churches. There's all kinds of different things you can do in the community to help out with our impact time. So,
Okay.
And one other note, a little bit to talk about at this year's shareholders meeting. Is there any kind of a special theme going on this year at the meeting?
well, each year we have a special person/persons starting off the meeting, and this year we have a gentleman doing a group from South Gallia. They're going to be doing the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have a Vietnam veteran, Rob Robkowski, and he's going to lead the pledge,
Okay.
and that's going to be at the beginning of the annual meeting. And it says, this is a former Marine. His tireless work with veterans received over dozens of awards and special recognitions. Most recently, he was instrumental in being named on the U.S. Navy ship in his honor of Woody Williams. And Woody Williams is West Virginia native and the Medal of Honor recipient.
Okay.
So.
Wow. So it's really great that
Yeah.
you're giving the spotlight of the meeting to recognize some of those folks. And
They do something special every year.
Yeah.
One year we had a lady that just became a U.S. citizen do the pledge. I mean, we've had different school involvements. I mean, it's just really it's always amazing to see what they come up with. So
right.
Good.
Well, that's neat.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's. I know we're starting to run short on time, and it always seems like this 28 minutes flies by.
Goes really fast.
Is there anything that you would like to add that we haven't talked about? Maybe we've covered everything, but we'll give you one last opportunity to, if we missed something that you wanted to share.
I think we've done a really good job covering everything. I want to just let people know that Ohio Valley Bank is a community bank. We invest a lot into our community. You know, we really appreciate having an opportunity to go out to these local businesses and do these things to help out. And I have found out the companies are really, really amazed that our employer gives us an opportunity to go and do these things. So it's just really nice to go out and talk to these people, and you get to find out, like the veterans that we work with when we do these Habitat for Humanity. These veterans have to go out and help build these houses. They have to put in so many credit hours to live in these houses. I mean, it's just these stories that you hear from these customers. It's just amazing.
Right. Yeah. Well, and you know, like we mentioned before, it's the people that make the bank.
Yep.
And you know, just some of the things like this that the bank does is a good indicator of the success, and it really is.
Yeah, of why stock's gone from 25 to 45 in
That's
the
right.
last year.
Absolutely. So we just, again, thank you for coming on the show
Thank you
today,
for having
Missy,
me.
and telling us all about this. And we really appreciate your input, and look forward to having you back in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So for Common Sense, I'm Brad Bapst,
I'm Ryan Mapes.
and we'll see you next time.